Okay, so we've been on the air for 12 years now, right?
Like today,
I mean,
or just
well,
like around 12
roughly
years?
like we started the podcast in 2008 and now
Yeah.
it's 2020. So we've been on the air for 12 years. Now granted, what eight of those years we were not really on the air as it were. But I'm pretty proud of that. I'm pretty proud that we even like before we took a hiatus, we recorded like 40 some episodes. So that's pretty impressive. I'm pretty happy with that. And again, this run, season 6, I feel like we're doing pretty well. We're on episode 7, and
Yep.
and things are looking pretty good. So I think I'm pretty proud of ourselves because especially when you compare it to, other shows and stuff like that have been on. A lot of times people switch out hosts and cast. There's very few TV shows that last longer than 12 years or whatever, right? So I'm feeling pretty good about ourselves, right? But you know what? We pale in comparison to something that I learned today. Literally hours ago, I was watching CBC, and David Suzuki, obviously,
Yep.
right? So famous Canadian, like a scientist,
National hero and treasure.
national hero, national treasure to Canada. And his TV show, The Nature of Things.
Yeah. Is it still on?
This is the crazy bit. So they are going into their 60th season.
Like 60.
60. They're going to 60th season.
Wait,
I looked it up.
How old is he?
Yeah, right, exactly. How old is he indeed? He is 86.
Jeez, so he's been doing this for, I don't know what the math is, but like more than half his life. It's like 80% of his life.
He started. I mean, I gotta double check this, but I'm pretty sure he's been the host the entire time.
Oh, okay.
So they started this show in 1960 when he was again 26ish or whatever the math is there. 24. Yeah. I can't remember what it is. But anyways, yeah. So 60 years ago he started. They're still going. And I kind of looked it up, and again, I think it's like it's not like. Sometimes like, seasons, like there's like 2 seasons in a year or something like that. But no, it's like 60 years of this show it's been going on. And I think he's still doing it. I just saw a commercial for the 60th season starting.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's looking still pretty cool and doing his thing. So, I guess congratulations to David Suzuki on his 60th season.
That must be the longest. Yeah, that must be one of the longest running TV shows, I guess, ever.
Yeah, it really has to be. I don't know how they like talk about when they talk about longest running shows in terms of like, dramas versus or like works of fiction versus whatever. Because I think Simpsons now is like the longest running. I don't know what they call it, the longest running like primetime series or longest running sitcom or whatever. But yeah, you take a show like Nature of Things, 60 seasons. Like I can't imagine what else has been running for that long. But I guess again, you take a look at like news shows and stuff like that. I don't know, maybe like 60 Minutes has been. I have no idea. Like it might have been old or new. I have no idea. So
yeah.
But anyways. Welcome to episode 47 of the ETC podcast, your one-stop pod for entertainment, technology, and cars, and all things random. My name is Casey Lee, and sitting across the city from me, as always, is
Aaron Zdenkar.
Yes, it is episode 47, and after talking about Nature of Things, we don't seem so hot anymore. Anyways, we start off today with some very exciting news. I was in the pharmacy the other day, and it's finally happened. I didn't think this would ever happen, actually, to be honest, in our lifetime. But Smarties has changed their box size. I don't know when the last time you ate a box of Smarties, but they're roughly that size.
Yeah. Yep.
And this is great for the audio only listening people who can't see my fingers. So the box is about.
Size of your head for the audio audience. It's about the size of Casey's head.
Yeah, about the width of my head. That's pretty good. So the new box is about that small. It's like not crazy smaller.
Okay,
but it's noticeably small. Like when you look at it, you're like, huh, that's kind of weird. And at first I was like, they're probably not saving that much material to make that. But then you got to imagine how many Smarties are being made.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I mean, is it the same number of Smarties inside the box?
Yep, same great number of Smarties,
Nice.
brand new box or whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if you're a Smarties guy or M&M's guy. I mean, I'm kind of both. But
definitely M&M's.
Yeah, probably. In the end, I'd probably have to say I'm M&M's over Smarties.
So is there some like technology news related to this? Like, is there something special about the box, or no? It's just
well, I'm stressing the entertainment technology in cars and all things random.
Yes. That's, okay. Yeah.
No, I mean they must have used some technology to make the box smaller.
It's right? Probably a lot more complicated than most people would think, right? Like they probably had to calculate, the ideal box size, and that they, I don't know how many they make in a given day or week or whatever. It's probably a lot though, right? So it's a significant process change too in the factory.
That's the big thing, right? Yeah, because I mean, obviously they have a production line that's producing just billions of boxes of this stuff, and like I started thinking about things too. Like I remember when I was smaller, I'd always be like, man, how it's so crazy how bags of chips have so much air in them, like when there's like so little in them. But then I realized I'm assuming that the reason they do that is to keep the chips intact, right? So like there's some air cushion to it or whatever. I don't know if it's a marketing thing, so they look bigger or whatever.
That is a good question. If somebody out there knows why there's so much air in a bag of chips, because we don't.
Yes.
But that,
email us.
I always assumed it was for, so that the
cushioning?
chips don't, get crushed.
So email us at podcast.utc@gmail.com. You see what I did there? I flipped when we introduced our email address. All right, what's not what's on your noggin, but what do you got news wise?
I'm since the last podcast, I'm a whole Apple event older. Right?
Yes.
So
yes.
We both are. And
iPhone 12's out. What I kind of like about our podcast is we don't do deep dives. But
there's gonna be no very little factual in-depth coverage. This is gonna be all just opinion and how we feel.
Yes.
But there's plenty of places to go see the facts, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah. That's exactly it. We're original. Yep. A lot of our opinions are not even based on fact, so but
semi-fiction.
But I think we would be remiss not to mention anything. So iPhone 12. What were your highlights of the event? Like what was piquing your interest?
I mean, before we get into it, I do want to say I do like these more frequent, shorter Apple events because it gives us more material for more podcast episodes. So that
what else? You know what else I like about it is it's like hard. It's easier to get back to work because I was like, I'm not gonna watch this. I got work to do.
Yeah.
And then I was like watching it, and then I was like, shoot, like an hour and a half has passed now. Like,
but, I didn't even watch it live, and I find the new events are easier to like if you're just gonna catch up later, right? Because the events used to be well over an hour, I think before. I don't know. Maybe I'm just.
I mean, they're still about an hour and a half. I was definitely nervous about like all the work that I had to do. And I was like, shoot, I got to go back to work. But I think before they might have. I don't know. They might have been too. I have no idea.
And just the fact that there's again they're pre-recording it all, right? There's no audience.
Yes.
I feel like it feels less weird to watch it non-live. Like it's.
I think like I know it's only been like what. Has there only been 2 events since pandemic?
2 or 3?
Or 3?
Maybe 3. Yeah.
Right, because there's I think WWDC, right? And then yeah. I will say the first time it was a little bit funky, but I've gotten used to it now. I was pretty impressed with the whole home thing they did, like how they built like this kind of fake home, and then
So I guess for those who didn't watch.
FDW.
They had this. I mean, okay, so let's get into I guess maybe one theme in the event, which was mini things.
Yes,
just in general, mini speakers, mini phones, but
mini length of keynote.
Yeah, so there's definitely some sort of mini theme, and they did this really interesting. Like it probably is like crazy expensive to shoot and produce this, but when they were introducing their new, I think it was the first thing they did, right? Introduce the new small smart speaker that they have, which is it's a HomePod, just mini, right?
HomePod
like,
Mini.
That's the name.
HomePod
Okay.
Mini. Yeah.
And they zoomed in.
Which is suspiciously. Have you seen the new Echo that came out like weeks ago?
Yeah, the Amazon, like the
Yeah.
orb thing. Yeah.
It's like like if you turn the Echo upside down.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like the flat part of the Echo is the bottom and the flat part of the HomePod is the top.
Yeah.
So
Spheres are in this year. So yeah, they I guess to emphasize the fact that it was small, which is kind of weird I don't know. It was a weird thing, but definitely cool to see where they just had it was a real home or set, but then they made it seem like they zoomed into a little miniature. And then they did it again. Like they zoomed in another time and I was like, okay, I'm getting confused here. Like Tim Cook is like a centimeter tall now. Like what's
Oh, I didn't see that part.
Yeah, because they zoomed in again, right? Like from the little mini house, they zoomed in. Back to Tim Cook. And anyways, so mini things. There's a HomePod now. I mean, I don't know if you were a huge HomePod fan before. I think like the mini one is interesting because I suspect that then you're more likely to have multiple, right? Like I think it's similar to Google and Amazon's small devices where the intention is you have multiple. So I mean that's interesting. I mean I think like again there's some very strange things in the whole like the things they emphasize definitely felt a bit odd at times. There's a huge emphasis on 5G and that Dutch guy that
from
Verizon CEO is. I was like, what is going on here? Is this like, but anyways, he like I can't count how many times he just said 5G. Like the whole thing was just 5G.
Well, did you? I mean, I don't know if you did the reading afterwards, but the really sucky thing is that United States are the only people who are getting the millimeter wave, the 5G, really fast, right? So that kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I was not one of the things I was not a fan. There's a few things I was not really super sold on for this keynote. One of them is 5G because, I mean, okay, one, you just mentioned the coverage thing. So I think in Canada there is 5G coverage in areas, but it's weird that there's different speeds of 5G, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so like I doubt we're gonna have a lot of coverage for the super fast 5G here.
Well, here's the crazy part. Like not only the coverage, but literally the iPhone models that we're getting are different than the ones that are in the States. So there's that little plastic window on the side of the US models versus the ones that we're getting.
Oh, interesting.
So only the US models have this like little plastic notch in the antenna that allows for that millimeter wave stuff. Every other country is getting doesn't have even hardware support for it.
So I mean that's I guess we'll see how the next few years play out. But I guess disappointing especially if you're spending time in the US. But the other thing I was gonna say is I feel like the fact that they focus so much on 5G made it even more obvious that like of all years to not care about this. It's like I don't know about you, I looked at my data usage the other day. On like my phone, right? My cell data usage. And it was like just a tick over zero. Like
yeah, it was 0.34.
And then I realized like, oh wait,
I had just upped my plan to like 11 gigs per month plus 20 extra gigs of bonus data. So I theoretically have like 30 gigs a month. And like 0.3. But I mean it kind of makes sense with the pandemic or whatever, right?
Yeah. So, it's great, but it wouldn't have been as big of a deal if they didn't spend so much time making it seem like this is the reason, this is one of the key things of the new devices.
Yeah.
So it sort of fell on a little bit on deaf ears, I think, for a lot of people. Another gripe of mine before we get into maybe some of the cool stuff. So MagSafe is back in a very interesting form.
To be honest, that was the thing that I got most excited about. Sorry. Not most excited about. I'll put that as second on my list as the thing that I got most excited about.
Yeah. So MagSafe is cool, and we can talk about why that's cool in a bit. But minor gripe, how many times they showed the use case of a wallet on the back of a phone.
Yeah.
I personally am not fine, people can do that, but I was just very surprised how many times they're like, you can put a wallet on the back of your phone, which to me is a bit, I find a bit bizarre and insane. And it is. Do you remember when like again, I have nothing against cases, but I don't know how you felt about. It was probably about 2 3 years ago where Apple really started leaning into, because I feel at some point Apple was like, like, okay, well, put a case on if you want. There's a huge aftermarket.
Yep.
But they were very just like, you would never see a keynote where Steve Jobs would have like a case on a phone, right?
No, yeah.
But I guess around the time when Apple started making their own cases, right? I guess around that time. And like the wallet thing reminds me a lot of that really stupid battery case. I don't know.
Yeah, I was about to say. I was going to say we're going to bring that. I personally wasn't that offended by that case, but yeah, people really hated that case.
It's just, I don't know. It's definitely, there's something philosophically about all that stuff that it feels a bit strange. Like it feels a bit strange for Apple to be hawking that at an announcement. But yeah.
Well, what I find a little bit weird too, and I didn't even realize this till you just start talking about it, but I mean, there's this huge push for like Apple Pay and like how your phone is your wallet. So like it's weird.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
It's weird how we're now this far in. It's like, oh, and also you can stick all your wallet stuff to your phone or whatever.
It's just like, again, like it'd be better if it's fine. I don't have anything wrong with like these products existing, right? And people finding use of them. It's just very counter to their a lot of the messaging, because why spend so much time on the edges of the phone and like it's glass all the way around. Oh, by the way, you can stick a wallet on the back.
Exactly.
So anyways, those are some of my gripes. So, what did you
just super quickly, because we got some other stuff to get to, but I was excited about MagSafe. But the number one thing I was excited about, which is something that's just been around, like it's the rumors are also getting super accurate these days, so you kind of know this stuff like months in advance. But I'm happy that finally Apple, and I'm hoping other people do this, are finally releasing smaller phones. I'm happy that the iPhone 12 mini is coming out. I'm not going to get a new phone this year, but if I were, I'd get the iPhone 12 mini. And I love, I miss small phones, I miss, and if you look at the Pro and the Pro Max, those got bigger actually. The Pro Max got a little bit bigger, and even the Pro, I think, got to the size of that middle, what was the 11 last year?
Yeah.
So I'm happy the 12 mini exists. Not quite as small. I'd love to hold it in person. But that's the biggest thing, to be honest, that I was excited about. I mean, I think the new colors look great. I think the new Pros look gorgeous. I think they look really nice.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think about it, it's just really they just look as good as the 5S and the 5 and the 4, because it's basically the same design, right?
I mean, it's. I mean, obviously, right now they're borrowing a lot from their iPads, right? Like the Pro and Air, which is a great thing because those are great. I'm with you on the smaller phones, and it's a bit disappointing because I think the previous generation Pro was a really great size, the 10 and the was as well. The only thing with this is how they continue. There's a correlation between phone size and capability. And I think last year that the Pro and the Pro Max were pretty much equivalent. They have become further apart now because the Max comes with some pretty crazy camera hardware.
Exactly,
this year that the Pro doesn't. So that's not great because maybe I'd love to have the premium hardware, especially on the cameras, without having to opt for the bigger screen.
The nice thing is I find my using cameras on phones, and even cameras period, I don't shoot that much anymore or whatever. The nice thing is for me personally, I'm not super swayed by that anymore, and so I'm happy that even the base model 12G still has 5G and MagSafe and kind of all the rest of the stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, super impressive stuff they announced on the Pro and the Pro Max, the RAW, the Pro RAW.
It's a weird word to say many times.
Yeah, exactly. And then the 10-bit HDR Dolby Vision video recording, it's pretty crazy because again, I don't think any camera can do that, period. To be able to record and output at the same time. So lots of really cool stuff. I love the phones that came out this year. It's been a long time since I've liked the design. Basically since they went to the 6. I didn't like the 6, and even the 10 was kind of cool, but I was like, whatever. So I'm happy how they look. But what's interesting is I find I'm getting more excited I'm getting less excited about the bump in specs because that's usually what this is all about. It's like, oh, our cameras are better, our speed is better, all this stuff like that. Our 5G is better. I'm more interested in the stuff that physically would change my day to day. So a smaller phone, I think, would change my day to day. MagSafe, I think, would change my day to day.
Yep.
Even though those aren't like the flagship things, like I think those are the things that will actually affect like how I'd use the phone or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So what was your top thing?
There's some just really small things that I feel just kind of went under the radar that like they touched on briefly, but so I think like MagSafe, I feel like they could have I feel like the MagSafe section where they showed some potential use cases, they just kind of glossed over really quickly, and I want to know more, right? Yeah. Because even everything from like phone mounts in cars, that are just magnetic, it's just like that's amazing, right? Like you said, day-to-day improvements like that. So I want to know more about that. I want to know why there's like NFC incorporated into the MagSafe standard. What do you do with that? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, the one use case that they showed, right, was kind of displaying the clock on the front, like so that so there's some communication there. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. So
and they're like the continuing the continuing incremental improvements in durability. I think they made some pretty big jumps, it seems, though. And I don't know if this was on all the phones or definitely the Pro models, but they actually have legitimate waterproof rating now. So before they were pretty good. Like, if you got them wet, it was raining, it was fine. But they've increased like the waterproof spec, and they're good down to 6 meters now, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that's one. And one thing I'm really excited because again, I don't usually use a case unless I'm trying to remember when the last time, like unless I'm doing something crazy, right? Outdoors or something. But there's two things. One, the screens, the ceramic coating on the screens, that's great because again, for durability. But my one gripe with cases before is there's never a good way to have a case that maybe just throw on every now and then, right? And again, with MagSafe, it seems like you just have to stick it on the back, right, and take it off whenever you want.
I am very curious how that's going to look and work. Like, I'm wondering if there's no longer a lip that wraps around your phone, and it's just kind of like vertical, like flush like that. Not to mention, again, like because of the new design, I wonder if it's a little bit like the 4S and the 5, where there's this like minuscule lip that's above the glass. Again, they said 4 times less breaking. I love how they had to explain that. They're like, this is 4 times less breakage or whatever. That means that when we drop it, there's the 4 times less phones that broke or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's definitely, I think they're amazing phones. But it is just one of these things where we've gotten to the point with I mean, we've been in this cycle for maybe, I want to say, since kind of like 4S 5 era, where they're just kind of, they're still very quite incremental, improvements, and don't get me wrong, improvements that like are amazing. But it's harder to get excited about these things, and that's why things I think like MagSafe, the glass and stuff like that, like that's actually the more impressive stuff, right?
So I do. You're touching on something that I do have more to say later. All right, we'll that's a preview. Let's.
Awesome. So check out the Apple iPhone 12. Starting even the lowest model at the 64 gig iPhone 12 mini is still $1,000. So goes up from there. Okay, let's talk about Emm Gryner.
Oh yeah.
So
Dave, do we have a song?
Dave. Hold on. Let me do my intro. So Dave Hamill, our good friend, tweeted at, I don't know if you saw, he tweeted at us the other day, like a week or two ago. I can't remember, within the last week.
Yeah.
And he's like, ETC, you should get on this. And so Emm Gryner had posted a tweet that it was, I think, a retweet of somebody else's or something, I can't remember exactly, talking about how people should know that Emm Gryner has a new jazz single out. She has some jazz music out, and I was like, "Oh, awesome!" And I tweeted back and I said, "What did I say? I said, Emm Gryner and jazz, awesome! We got to hear this." And then I thanked her. I said, and FDK, original ETC podcast listeners, The big story of Emm Gryner is that me and Aaron and a bunch of friends went to a Josh Ritter concert, saw her open, loved her music, started researching, found out she was, I believe, a bass player for David Bowie. U2's Bono, wish he had written one of her songs. I believe it was, oh man, I'm forgetting now. It's either Almighty Love. And she was one of the first kind of artists that we didn't know. Like if you go back to ETC 2, 3, 4, like we played, Rob Hing and Beyond Sunday and Vanderpark, and these are all bands that we had personal connections to. We kind of knew them. But Emm Gryner was one of the first artists that was kind of like, celebrity to us that we didn't know and that we emailed. And she totally just gave us permission to play her song, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And that kind of snowballed to us playing, remember, we got the Stars, the Frames, Dallas Green, all these, back in the day when we actually put effort into this. We had all these songs. And I believe a big chunk of this was because of Emm Gryner, right? Like she was the first, she gave us confidence. And she also gave us, yeah, exactly. She gave us legitimacy for us to be able to email other artists and say, hey, Emm Gryner's let us do it. Will you let us? And then the list kept growing or whatever, right? I went to a concert with Dave in Wakefield to go see her play. And I don't know if you remember the story, but I very awkwardly went up to her and thanked her. And she, I don't blame her. Like she probably didn't know at all what I was talking about. So I was like, thank you, whatever. So anyways, you ruined the surprise. But anyways.
I was just too excited.
I emailed her again.
But I'm surprised. I didn't know this.
Yes, I emailed her on the weekend, and she got back to me today, and she has given us permission on the podcast and the YouTube publication to play her latest single, Butterflies. Now,
Amazing.
The interesting thing is about this is I did a brief amount of research, and this is really cool. So it turns out this was basically a birthday gift, her 85th birthday for her dad. It was a birthday gift to him. So last year, her dad turned 85, and she said as a birthday gift, she was going to make a jazz album for him. And then so she started a Kickstarter campaign and got all these backers to back her to produce this album. So she was raising money back in, I think, February to April or something like that. So there's a big Kickstarter page. You can read all about it. And the album is now out to backers. So people who have pledged, they can listen to the full album.
That's awesome.
But we do have one of the singles here today, which is available. I purchased it today on iTunes. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Music, these kind of things. But here it is, Emm Gryner, Butterflies.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
It was years ago when we flew. Nothing came between me and you. We were untouchable and true. There were butterflies and skies of blue. But now nothing goes as we planned. And I'm trying to understand, 'cause I never thought we'd see the day when those butterflies are miles away. Once a flutter, a perfect flake of snow. Now there is thunder. Is this how it goes? Once we were eager, now we are slow. Once there was sunshine, and now there's only cold and an emptiness inside. As we move out like the tide, now there's just a memory of some butterflies that you gave me. Once a flutter every time I heard your name. Now there's a shudder and I try to look away. Once we were eager, now we are slow. Once there was sunshine and now there's only cold. It was years ago when we flew. Nothing came between me and you. We were unstoppable and true. There were butterflies and skies of blue. Gone are the butterflies I had with you. No more butterflies or skies of blue.
From her latest album, Just For You, that is Emm Gryner's jazz album. Again, a birthday gift to her dad. If you're interested in the album, you can, again, buy the single right now on online stores digitally. You can also listen to the singles on Spotify and Apple Music. But you can pre-order the album and you can purchase the album. That's coming out kind of soonish. Unfortunately, the Kickstarter campaign is over, so you can't get those anymore. The Kickstarter actually did offer CD and vinyl versions and digital versions, kind of all across the board. But definitely keep your eye out for Emm Gryner's Just For You album. Big thanks to Emm Gryner for doing that for us again, and big thanks way back in 2008 for being one of the first artists to give us permission to play music. Endless thanks, and awesome to see her, do jazz music. I mean, do you remember when she covered Crazy Train? Like, she did a piano version of Crazy Train. Yeah. So it's kind of cool to see her range, right? Like, she'll do kind of like, kind of pop rock singer-songwriter stuff. Then she has this really cool cover album, and now she's doing jazz. And I don't know about you, but I mean, I'm a pretty big jazz fan, and Butterfly sounded pretty awesome to me. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And yeah, thanks. And maybe this is, again, just like 8 years ago, whenever that was. Maybe this will be the start to us getting more music on the podcast.
Again, we'll kind of kickstart it again.
Emm Gryner starting it off again.
Yeah, exactly. So big thanks to Emm Gryner.
Yeah.
But moving on. So it is that time. I was honestly thinking that I would like start off the episode with this, because then it'd be like, oh man, we really flipped it on its head.
Keep them on their toes.
But no, same old predictable podcast. Same old. All right, it is time for that segment. What is underneath Aaron's hat and on top of his noggin? Yeah. I do this kind of fancy, but that's because I can't really remember what the name of the segment is. So. All right.
Yes, other than my hair that is growing very long, and I don't know when I'm going to cut it.
I did notice that your hair is growing quite long. But you know what? That's the way to do it.
Trying something, at least, something new this year, right? So
yeah, exactly.
So I feel like this is becoming a trend where anytime there's an Apple event, that's all I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
But
I was thinking we'd get away from the Apple news, but okay, all right.
This is actually not going to be Apple specific. It's related and relevant because new phones are out, and specifically, some people are going to be making a decision. Do you buy a new device or not? You were mentioning that, maybe not this year, right?
Actually, this is the longest I've held out. My phone is now three years old, and then I'm trying not to buy one. I'm trying to go as long as I can now. So
yeah. So I mean, that's interesting what you're saying, because you had mentioned, I think you pegged it at like iPhone 5 or something where you had felt that maybe there was a bit of a shift, some sort of shift in, whether you consider it incremental versus big jumps.
Yes.
So I think if you look back, what is interesting is in the early days of smartphones, iPhone 3, which is the first one we had here in Canada, and up until I would actually say 6S, but I think every year it was a norm that it was a pretty big leap, right? Like I remember the 3G being basically like when we got it, it was great, but then you realized pretty soon like this is almost unusable.
Yeah, that was the big difference.
Yeah,
100%. Like my 3G was so bad. Like it was like you couldn't answer, you couldn't slide to answer, you couldn't answer your phone, right?
And I just remember the 3GS was not that much different, but what I do remember was that hey, this is actually usable. Like I can actually open up things. And it
I can
doesn't
answer
just, like,
my phone.
freeze.
Exactly.
Right. So that's a big leap. But I think that continued, and I think there's that era where that technology was bleeding edge, right? Because a lot of the companies, like Apple especially, they were still trying to figure out how to make these things, right, and push that envelope. So I think that continued until I would say iPhone 6. Because I think up to that point, every year was a pretty big, more than incremental improvements. So at that point, and this is funny because like I think I haven't seen a phone that there's more of around, and I think this has become less and less as they're starting to die off. But at some point, I don't know if you noticed, but everyone seemed like so many people just had an iPhone 6 or 6S, like for ages. Right. That was like you either had people with new phones or people with iPhone 6 or 6S.
Right.
Because I think that was the point where you could actually keep it for many years and it's fine, right? Like, totally.
Yeah. And I remember actually, I almost want to say even my 4S was lasting pretty long. It was still doing pretty well. Yeah. But you're right. That was the number one thing. Like I found myself getting kind of roped into this artificial timeline because of companies like Rogers. Like because they had their kind of like 2-year commitment, 3-year commitment or whatever.
Yeah.
That even after I started buying unlocked phones, I was like, oh yeah, 2-year commitment, 3-year commitment.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like with the 6S and now the 10 and maybe a little bit of the 4S, every phone I was like, this is still perfectly usable and perfectly fine. Right. Like the only thing like that was bad on my 6 was the battery was starting to go, but the performance was fine.
Yeah.
And
which,
that's
by
why
the way, it was, I don't know if they're still replacing them, but about a year or two ago, it was $40 or $50 to replace.
Yeah, exactly. Because there was some lawsuit around it or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm like, you know what? I don't really need this new phone because my phone right now is perfectly fine. So I'm just going to keep it as long as I can.
Yeah. So, I this is less news. I guess this is the category of this our podcast where I just rant about something I think is true, but
and it's fine. It's not news, like because that's why we call the first segment the news. This is
This
is under your hat and on your noggin.
Exactly. So I've been. This is like something that I felt for a while, but I think lately now I've like formulated an actual theory. I don't know if it's a theory, but a kind of like law of the world or something in my viewpoint. So I suspect, I really feel like if you look at, basically by the time of the era of the iPhone 6, 6S, and to be honest, probably the same is true for, Android devices and things like that, because, in terms of specs and stuff, I think phones have largely progressed at the same rate, right? I think at that point in time, the decision on whether to get a new phone became very ambiguous and, like you said, almost artificial in some cases, right? So you said that maybe it was just a forcing function because you were renewing a self contract or something.
Yeah, exactly,
right?
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people were like that, right? They could not explain why they're getting a new phone other than some artificial thing, right? Yeah. Or maybe it's just like, oh, it's been 2 years. There's a new phone. I should get it. Right?
Yeah. Especially when the new features are not that compelling. Right?
Yeah.
It's not like the features that were coming out were like, oh my God, I need that. Right?
Yeah. And again, these phones every year get better. I'm not denying that, right? Like there's improvements every year, and objectively the phone this year is going to be better than the phone last year. Right?
Yes.
Like
that's
everyone. I think everyone realizes that. But this is how I see things now. I think because I was also like I've went back and forth around different ways to look at like a decision like this, right? Like, when do I get a new phone, right? And to be honest, at one point, it was literally, I was like, I don't know, so I'm just gonna buy one every year, which sounds crazy, but I was like, I have no way to make this decision, right? Because like, what is it like? Do I wait 2 years, right? Do I wait 1 year? And if you do the math, actually, because I sell and like recycle, I guess, like give.
Well, that's
else,
I think
like,
that's one of the big things. Yeah. That's one of the big things, I think, like for people who are listening. Like one thing, when you say that statement, I'm going to buy a new phone every year. I think one of the biggest things that people don't realize is that you're selling your old ones and actually making money off your old ones.
Yeah, and so whether I do that every year or 2 years, right? There's more money at the point of purchase. You know, I have to put that money up front, but I can sell a 1-year-old phone for more money than a 2-year-old phone, right?
Yeah.
And you know, so there's not a huge difference, realistically speaking. I think I did the math and really with that scheme, you really have to wait at least 3 or 4 years where it starts becoming, you know, significantly cheaper versus what you can sell it for. But so I think there's really only 2 ways to look at phone purchases, and this might extend to other things, but phones I think are particularly acute because it's the only thing where I think a lot of people do at least like consider a purchase when they see that come out, right? Because you know, like Apple releases, I think like MacBooks probably get updated almost every year, right?
More, they usually get a refresh every year or two. Yeah. So,
but I don't know about you, but it's not like in the back of my mind, I don't have this huge dilemma of like, okay, do I get a new, like it's 2020. Like,
you're right.
You know
just kind of till it becomes almost unusable, right? We kind of keep it, right?
Yeah. So phones are weird because, you know, and I think for good purpose, I think there's very few devices you rely on so much, but I actually think now that there's only 2 ways to look at this decision. One way being, and this is realistically what most people, how they should look at it. Is your current phone broken? And if it's not, then you like, there's really, as assuming you have something newer than an iPhone 6, there's like actually no reason. There's no reason, right? And so that should be
okay. Well, hold on. What do you define as broken though?
So something that is so like I would say, obviously, you know, if you can't even use it, but even battery, you know, so legitimately, if your battery is just not holding a charge, even then though, like you have a choice. You
can replace the battery.
It's actually, Apple actually makes it quite cost effective to just replace a battery.
Yeah, you're totally
even
right.
on the latest phones, it's maybe $100, $200, which is again a fraction of the price of a brand new device, right?
Again, brand new iPhone 12, right? $1,000, so a tenth of the cost to just replace the battery. Yeah. So
if it's just your battery, I still don't think it qualifies like to buy a new phone.
Not to mention the screen, right? The screen is actually only about $100, $200 to replace or whatever, right? Again, a fraction of the cost.
Exactly. So I think that's one method, and to be honest, I think most people should just fall under that. Okay. There's another way to look at this because, you know, obviously you and I both understand, like, we're probably not, like, at least me, I'm not someone who's like, okay, I'm just going to use it until it stops working. I value something different in this type of purchase, right? Which is, you know, the incremental improvements. I mean, I think you and I, especially since we're familiar with software, I think we have an appreciation for that, right? Yeah. And this is what the thing that I realized is that I think when you look at a phone as kind of a traditional purchase, like a one-time event, and it's a thing, then you know, you just default to that decision. Is it broken or not, right? Yeah. And if it's not, then keep using it. If it is, buy a new one. But there's another way to look at this, which I think I realize from what we can learn from software, right? And so, like, you and I probably both pay for a lot of software that's monthly fee, right? Everything from like accounting stuff to, you know, messaging stuff, anything, right? So that's really interesting because, you know, what in the software world, like, we wouldn't complain about, oh, they made some minor improvements this like last update.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. That's true. Yeah.
It's like that's why we love software like that, right? Because you don't. It's not like in the back of the days of like you buy Windows 95, and that's what you get until there's Windows 98, right? The fact that you pay a monthly fee and it gets updated, and so that's another way to look at it. And I realized, like, yeah, you know what? That's the other way to make this type of decision where, are you buying it because you just need a device that works, or are you buying this because you actually want to buy into incremental improvements, right? And
right.
treat it as a recurring cost, right?
Right.
The same way that you pay, $30 a month for some software that you expect to keep updating, but you're okay with it not being. It's not like, oh, it's a new year. You don't expect it to be like, oh, a completely new revamp, right?
Yeah.
And in some ways, actually, you don't want that to happen. In some ways, like the familiarity and constant improvement is actually great, right? Because you're familiar with it, it just keeps getting better. So I think that's another way to look at this. Is like you either, again, buy a phone if your existing one is broken, or you look at this as like, cool, like this is a recurring cost. And I think at most frequent, it's every time there's a new phone, but it doesn't have to be. You could also be like, this is a recurring cost on an every 2-year basis, right?
Yeah.
But it's not because you have to struggle with this decision of, do I get a new phone? Is it so much better than the last year that I really need to buy a phone now? Because I think there's no good answer to that, right? Like you're just gonna be, okay, maybe I want it. Do I need the better camera? There's no clear answer to that. So the only way to reconcile that is it's a recurring thing, and it almost you treat it as if similar to software, right?
But it's kind of weird though, because I feel like that would usually be a mindset that comes from the seller, not the buyer, right? It's almost like the seller would sell that first before the buyer makes that kind of conclusion, right? And it's like, I feel like if Apple was like, we've moved to now basically like a subscription model, where it's like you just pay us, $100 a month, and you get basically the latest greatest phone every time, right?
Exactly.
I feel like that might be easier to swallow with that.
Exactly.
But I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, unless you're just rationalizing, purchasing a new phone every year.
No, I mean, so I think you make a really good point. Like, my thing I was going to finish off with here is, it's just I feel that the nature of these devices has changed over the last 4 or 5 years, but the way to buy them hasn't. And I think that is a real problem here, right?
Yeah.
Because they're still treating it as if you're buying and making the decision like it was when an iPhone 3GS or 4 came out, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's a big purchase, but hey, like, it's so much better than the last one. I'm gonna buy it to get like the cutting edge thing, and that's still how these purchase decisions go. But I actually don't think that's what these devices are anymore, right? So I actually think if Apple came out with some sort of subscription model, I'd probably be completely game for that, right?
Yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, I don't even have to make the decision on when I should buy a new phone. I just have to make a decision on how much am I willing to spend on a recurring basis, right? Like, what is it worth to me? So you're right. I think this is a hard thing because most people can't see it that way, because everyone from like the cell phone companies to the Apple and Google, they're still treating it like when they originally came out with these phones, right? But I don't think that's how. Yeah.
And I'm curious. I'm curious because I think they're maybe testing and teasing that model a little bit with like, how you can lease phones now. Like I think was it on the Apple keynote where they said you can now get this phone for $21 a month or something like that.
So the US has had a program. I forget what they call it, but the US has had this. We don't have it in Canada except for if you're a business, then you can lease a phone. But in the US for a good 2 years now, I think they've had I think they call it an upgrade program.
Yeah.
So you pay a monthly fee, and then you either have the choice to keep it or buy it at a certain price at the end of that year, or get a new phone. And you know what? I think it's, again, this gets back to like, what are the things I don't want to worry about, right? Like with a phone, I don't want to worry about like, when, how long should I keep this? I don't want to worry about, do I need to keep this in really good condition, so that if I need to sell it, it's like, it's not all busted and stuff like that. So I just think that, if they got rid of all those decisions and I could just be like, cool, like, and the good thing about the US program is it's Apple Care Plus covered and everything. So it's like literally you don't have to worry about anything, right? You could drop it, whatever. You just give it back to them at the end of the year and you get a new phone, right? So I would love that. So that's my like rant of the day. But
I don't know how much that is like going to that model, or if that's really just offering again, like because if you think about the car industry, right? ETC car news. the car industry has basically this model of leasing, but it's not really motivated by the same thing. Like, it's motivated for financial reasons, right? Because people just can't afford like to buy these things, right? And so they come up with a model where they can, they can borrow money and they can whatever. And I wonder if what's going on with these upgrade programs actually is more on that front, because these phones are getting so expensive now, right? It's like $2,000 for a phone. Might not want to afford that. Let's go for the monthly plan. So I don't know where the motivation lies, but I would be very interested to see a couple years from now when not if, when this happens, you're going to be like, episode 47, check it out.
Exactly.
I was right.
Exactly. I hope that's the case. And I mean, the expense thing is.
But you're
really,
right, though. It makes sense, though. I mean, I think I would be pretty happy. I mean, I hate the idea of monthly fees and stuff like that. I mean, just in general. I mean, you've probably heard me say this before, but I wish I could give like $1 billion to Hydro Ottawa so I would never have to pay a bill again. Like these kind of things where I just like.
But that's different because that never gets better, right? Like that service doesn't. So whereas I think, again, going back to software, like, you and I are both perfectly happy to pay for a lot of software because it gets better and you don't have to deal with things like installation and setup and things, right? Like it just removes all the things you don't want to deal with and you're left with something that keeps on getting better. But on the costing, I think that, again, it is beer. These phones are crazy expensive. It is an interesting thing to look at because, I've always believed that, these are expensive devices, but I think everyone's in a different situation. I think if you ask a lot of people that have these phones, if you look at, that on a yearly basis, I would say it's actually one of the smaller expenses a lot of people have, right? And not to say it's on par with, you mentioned a car, right? Like arguably a car probably has a lot more utility for people who have one versus a phone.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think if you ask someone, would you live without your car or your phone for a day? Right. Yeah. That's interesting because I'm willing to bet that a lot of people like might actually choose a phone, right? Like,
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
So it's interesting because on that basis, it's like, it's still a very small cost in general life, right? Like these are expensive devices, but think how much you get out of it and compared to all your other expenses, whether it's living expenses, things like cars, et cetera, or, like I think they seem expensive. I actually think that per dollar, you people get a lot.
Yeah, no. It makes sense. Like, I mean, I remember when, the first iPhone started costing more than a MacBook, and it's like, but you know what? It makes sense. Like the amount you use it and the amount you get out of it, you actually get way more out of it than you do a laptop, right? Like you're on a lot more. It's kind of your connection to the world, everything, right? So, definitely agree with that. So, so not to discount though your first opinion though, in terms of like the first category, which is, you know what, just use your phone till it's broken. But you're right. If you're not in that category, looking at this another way is definitely, I think a very interesting way, and I would not be surprised if things headed that way, right? So
hopefully that makes you helps whoever's listening make a decision on your iPhone 12 purchase.
Okay, we are coming to a close here on this episode 47 of the ETC podcast. But just before we go, just a couple small bits of news here. Ready Player 2 apparently is coming into production. Our good friend Dave mentioned that to us. The Obi-Wan series is going to start filming in March 21. So Ewan McGregor.
Nice.
So again, another Star Wars series going to be coming out. Who knows if it'll be good as Mandalorian? We'll see.
Do they know? Do they say who's kind of like directing and running that yet? Is it?
Well, they probably did, but I don't know.
Maybe it's Jon Favreau. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last thing I'll mention is we teased it a little bit last episode or two ago, where I was going to mention 2 YouTube things. The other YouTube thing I was going to mention is everybody should go watch The Boy Band Con. It was a YouTube original. It's about this guy. I totally forget his name now. Oh man, I was at the tip of my tongue. But he's the guy who formed Backstreet Boys and who formed NSYNC and all this stuff like that. Okay. And it's a really interesting story. Pearlman, I think. No. I was gonna say Ron Pearlman, but that's completely wrong.
This is a new documentary?
It's actually pretty old. It's about a year old now or so, but it was only available. Yeah, you probably saw it.
Yeah.
It was on YouTube Premium for a while.
I'm assuming there's not more than one.
No. You watched this, right? And the whole like scandal behind the guy.
Yeah, like he was involved in it. Wasn't just NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, right? I think there was other.
Yeah, there was other ones.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. You know what? I don't want to. Ron Perlman is obviously is obviously Hellboy. That's not who this is. So let's just clarify that. It's Lou Pearlman. Lou Pearlman is the story. So definitely check it out. It's a really good documentary. Do you have anything else to say, Aaron?
No.
All right. So that is it, everybody, for episode 47 of the ETC podcast. If you want to email us, please email us at podcast.etc@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter at the ETC podcast. The ETC podcast is currently hosted on anchor.fm. You can find us on that website, anchor.fm/the-etc-podcast. You can even leave a voice message if you want. It's distributed to all your favorite platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, and more. Big thanks to Dave for putting us on the radar of Emm Gryner. And huge thanks to Emm Gryner, not only for being one of the first artists to kind of support us back in 2008, but for reviving our legitimacy by allowing us to play Butterflies. Check out her album, Just For You, Butterflies, Emm Gryner. But as for now, that is it for episode 47 of the ETC podcast on this wonderful Wednesday, October 14th, 2020. My name is Casey Lee, and sitting across from me, not across from me, across the city from me, as always, is
Aaron Zadenkar.
We'll see you guys next week.
Go replace your broken bones.